One of the cons about staying in Amador is there's no public buses that run direct between here and the old town. You have to take like 3 buses, but for $30 you can get there on one of these hop-on, hop-off buses.
We are able to see the neighborhood by Tilla. It is famous because of their apartment buildings, the tallest building in Central America.
That one is one of the best places in Panama City.
Following the destruction of the original town, the city was reconstructed further south. This became known as the new city, but with Panama City continuing to grow, develop, and modernize. And with the construction of modern-day Panama City, the original old town where the ruins are became known as old town, while this became known as new old town. But the original old town where the ruins are became known as Panama Viejo, while the new old town became known as Casco Viejo to avoid a confusion. But wasn't always the charming colonial district we see today. This new city too had to be almost completely reconstructed on multiple occasions, having suffered the effects of several fires and earthquakes. It actually used to be a very bad neighborhood, one of the worst parts of town. By the mid-20th century, Casco Viejo had practically become a ghetto, rife with crime, disease, and squatters. It wasn't until 1997 when the city was declared an UNESCO World Heritage Site that there was a massive gentrification project that took place. All the people that were used to be living here were sort of pushed out. And the old colonial buildings were beautifully restored to their late colonial look, which comprises an eclectic mix of Caribbean, Gulf Coast, and French neo-Renaissance architecture. It's now regarded as one of the finest colonial districts in Latin America. Behind me is the Iglesia La Merced, and to the trained eye, this church will seem seemingly out of place among the rest of the city's architecture, and that's because this is one of the few original buildings that was salvaged from the original Panama City, and that's because Captain Morgan actually chose to use it as a barracks. The early 17th century Franciscan church was moved brick by brick and reassembled at its present location following the reconstruction of the city. Others needed to be left behind due to lack of funds. It was here where the first mass in the newly inaugurated city was held. Its wooden ceiling and mixed surfaces are unique amongst the city's churches. Another iconic feature are its wooden columns, original colonial roof, and mosaic work that line the address along the sidewalk. The church also boasts a statue of 13th century Saint Maria della Cervello. After she died, she would sail on the wings of the wind to rescue ships who were in danger of wrecking. Following the incident with Henry Morgan, the Spanish thought it would be best to fortify their city with defensive walls, which would not only serve as a protection against future potential pirate attacks, but also potential slave revolts. Behind me is the iconic American Trade Hotel. Built in 1917, it was once the hub of retail trade for American and foreign merchants. But during the neighborhood's dark days, the dilapidating building came under the control of gang members until a neighborhood crackdown in 2006. Today, it's been restored to its former glory and is regarded as the finest hotel in Casco Viejo. One interesting aspect is that it's actually staffed by reformed gang members. Right in front of us is the Church of St. Joseph. This Augustine church was one of the first structures to be erected when the city was rebuilt in 1673. Though the current church we see actually dates from 1737, as the original was ravaged by a fire. Following the abolishment of convents and expulsion of the order in 1832, the church was converted into a school chapel until the ban was lifted in the late 19th century. Its wooden altar adorned with gold leaf is considered one of Panama's greatest treasures. According to local legend, when Captain Morgan and his men sacked Panama City, the Jesuits cleverly painted this gold leaf altar black to cover up all the gold and made Captain Henry Morgan and his men think that it was completely worthless and unworthy of taking. This is Casco Viejo's Plaza de la Independencia, now the popular city park from the 17th through 19th centuries. It was the site of many bullfights and theatrical performances, and of course, what does every Latin American city have on its main square? The main cathedral. Officially named the Basilica of Santa Maria the Ancient, construction of the cathedral began in 1688, and after being delayed by two fires, it was consecrated in 1796 with slight modifications. It was originally located in the town of Santa Maria on the Caribbean coast before being transferred to the now destroyed Panama Viejo. Curiously enough, when the original cathedral was destroyed along with the rest of Panama Viejo, its beams made of Guayacan wood survived intact. It was on these steps that Panama's independence from Spain and separation from Colombia were officially announced. It's also been the chosen venue for state funerals. Its towers, which are plated with mother of pearl, were once the highest in Latin America.
Do końca wejść do środka między nimi. To zdjęcie dajcie.
dating from 1874. The Grand Hotel once served as the headquarters of operations for French and U.S. companies working on the Panama Canal. So it's only appropriate that these days it houses the Panama Canal Museum. Not everything was rebuilt following the devastating fires that ravaged the new city. Behind me, we have the ruins of the Church of the Society of Jesus, an 18th century Jesuit convent that was destroyed in a fire in 1781 and by earthquake in 1882. The main reason it was left in ruins was because by this time the Jesuits, along with other religious orders, had already been expelled by order of King Charles II. It's also believed that it was most likely never completed to begin with. We're on the grounds of the former church and convent of Santo Domingo. It replaced the original in what's now Panama Viejo. This is another building that wasn't rebuilt and was left in ruins after the Great Fire of 1756. The structure's most famous landmark is this arch. It actually played the deciding factor in whether to give the Panama Canal to Panama or Nicaragua. That's because during the handful of earthquakes, this structure didn't collapse, so that's why they took into account the seismic activity when building the canal. But the arch finally did end up collapsing in the 2000s and had to be rebuilt. That's something Daniel Ortega is still bitter about, and it's not entirely off the table. Next to the convent stands a small 18th century chapel and currently houses a museum of colonial religious art. But the most impressive feature is its altar, comprised of thin gold sheets attached to wood with rabbit tail. Only the Virgin and two cherub figures are original. It's considered to be the brother of the St. Joseph Church altar. I've been to other cities in the world that had an umbrella street, but here in Panama City we have the aptly named Calle de Sombrero, or Street of the Hat. We've arrived at the city's iconic French Square. Built into the city's best preserved fortifications, which were once the site of dungeons and executions, this beautiful monument pays homage to the people who helped turn the dream of the Panama Canal into a reality. The 22,000 who lost their lives in a bid to revolutionize the world. And the Cuban doctor whose research on mosquitoes led to the eradication of yellow fever. Over there we can see the iconic Bio Museo, the first Latin American project of Frank Gehry. That building with the rounded top is the former Donald Trump Tower, still the tallest building in Central America. So say what you want about the man, but he had ambitions. the National Theater. It was constructed in 1908 on the site of a former 18th century monastery. It's famed for its beautiful but unusual frescoes depicting Panamanian history in the form of Greek mythology. And right in front of us is the Church of St. Francis of Assisi. It was one of the largest convents in what's now Panama Viejo throughout various periods of its history, belonging to various Catholic orders, mainly Franciscans and Jesuits. Its 82-foot high bell tower is the highest structure in Casco Viejo. Although impressive, the current church we see was only constructed in 1918. Throughout its history, it served as a hospital for foreigners, a Bolivar institute, and an Augustinian school. When Panama became part of Colombia, Convent became the headquarters of the 1st Battalion Constituent Assembly, where the Panama Protocols were approved and the country's first constitution was written. And this plaza right here is named after the famed Venezuelan revolutionary Simón Bolivar. Concealed inside this modern construction is what's considered to be the oldest church in Panama City, the San Felipe Neri Church and Oratory. It had its origins in the 1680s as an oratory house and hospital for priests. In 1854, some nuns established a school here. Throughout its history, it's held various humanitarian functions, but was also notoriously a prison and barracks during the Thousand-Day War. It has since undergone significant restorations and additions, though the original stairs, tombstones, and parts of the original colonial interior have been uncovered and restored. All the churches here have a Bethlehem replica.